And welcome in. This is the episode of the Duval Died I've been the most excited to do. We have an actual full game in the books. The Jacksonville Jaguars are 1-0 after winning for the second time in 11 tries in Indianapolis. Lucas Oil Stadium, always a tough place to go. But the Jacksonville Jaguars overcome 31-21. I don't know. We'll dive into that, of course. That's a whole lot of diving. And listen, when you dive this deep, you're said to always have a diving buddy. The Duval dive along with me. Travis Holmes up. Big Cat Country. What's going on, my guy?
And I'm doing well. We got a huge NFL game today. I don't want to call it a Super Bowl, but it may be to that level. You know, we're getting there.
Well, let's pump the brakes. You're getting into week 2 already, and I can't blame you for it. But let's go ahead and recap a few things from week 1 that we enjoyed that will be factors here upcoming in week 2. And listen, one might say that I'm only doing this because I wrote about him in the Jaguar report. Bing! But here's the thing. That's not the only reason I think this guy is going to be a big factor throughout the season. And, you know, I can't be dubbed foolish for thinking so, but, you know, let me show you what I mean here, Travis. Travis, how cool is that for you?
Oh, I mean, he was the guy on those opening series. So yeah, so absolutely, you love to see it. You love to see it materialize. And the other part about that is that play was drawn up for Evan Ingram, who had a small hole to put it in, but Trevor made the right decision. I would rather him make that, not if he's not 100% sure it's going to make it, don't have that red zone turnover. That showed me growth from him, because we know that was something early in last season. He would try to fit that in, and it made 50-50 that might end up as a turnover, but he instead takes the time that he has available and finds the guy open in the end zone. Man, that's awesome stuff.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a lot of that. You mentioned the whole technical football aspect, as you're talented in doing, my friend, but also, man, listen, the journey that Calvin Ridley's had to endure getting back to that spot after making the mistake. Listen, we've seen NFL players out there getting 2 or 3 chances, and at this point, he took his second chance and did something cool with it so far. People are calling him a bona fide number 1 receiver in the NFL. There's a whole lot of stuff going on, and he's just a part of the effort we saw on offense, Travis, where the Jags were harshly criticized by people. Oh, I don't think they look so good. Still scored 31 points, and he's part of the reason. Now, one might say, but Cal, Zay Jones had to play the game, and there's a whole lot of stuff he did. Well, first of all, I'm not prepared to tell you that you're wrong if that's what you think. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and look at that play real quick as well, because I'll tell you this, Travis, when secure the catch for the touchdown was an amazing thing to behold. I'm taking nothing from it, but think about this. The previous play, Calvin Ridley had gone in, looked like he had the touchdown, but was called out of bounds. Travis, if Calvin Ridley didn't step out, he would have had over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns in the first half alone.
Yes. It was literally the game of inches that made that, that changed that and allowed that incredible catch by Zay Jones to happen. And I'm happy with it, because, hey, man, Zay is he's often forgotten, within the fan base, within, those surrounding the team, not the team. The team obviously knows that he's, present and he's dominating. He's shown it in practice when, not Christian Kirk, when Calvin Ridley got injured, even in training camp. He showed out that day and the next day. So we know who Zay is, but it's awesome to see it materialize on that field, man.
Yeah, and Zay taking care of business, and that offense has a lot of skill players that overcame a lot of the woes that did happen offensively. Trevor's rolling out a lot. Calvin Ridley bailed him out a few times. But I think there was some impressive stuff in the run game from both Travis Etienne and the biggest mistake I made this offseason, Tank Bigsby, doing things to bounce outside and find options. I'm leading into it. I screwed up, Travis.
Hey, man, no, I'm thinking about the biggest mistakes. No, that Tank's made this offseason. That's the way that's the way I interpreted that. Because, hey, Tank, he had a rookie game, and it stinks because he obviously had the preseason, fumble on the goal line, and then we turn around and we get not one but two pretty major, issues, mistakes, kerfuffles. I don't know what to call it.
I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah.
listen,
He's had some brain farts in this first game, and that stinks to see. But yeah, but the interception off, and that was a really rough play to have, and then follow that up with the fumble.
well, and I'll say this: what we could come to then classify and conclude that Travis thinks brain farts stink. Awesome. So with that in mind, there's a lot of we kind of touched on the offensive moments there. They did have their struggles, as Travis mentioned.
Yeah.
DeForest Buckner making his presence felt, I think, was a big part of it too. We'll get into that a little later, I'm sure. But yeah, the offense, I think we've kind of summed up that the 31-point performance. The guys themselves seem to think it should have been, or had the potential to be, a 50 burger.
It should have been 50.
Yeah, and that's despite Anthony Richardson having what I thought was a pretty good debut. Nothing perfect, obviously, another rookie factor there too. But one of the mistakes that Anthony Richardson was forced into was an interception as well. Which, I mean, if you're a Jags fan, you love to see it, and I know you're a defensive guy.
Yes, and it was with Calvin Ridley and Ingram on the corner.
I want to give a little moment to show a little bit of the defense, because I know that's where you live. But
yes, sir.
I know the biggest thing a lot of Jags fans are walking away with is Josh Allen with the 3 sacks. But you aren't exactly sold on his effectiveness overall. Break that down a little bit.
Well, that's the fun part about it. And I wanted to make sure I give this at least a second for some long-term conversation, because T-Wig, Locked On Jaguar, did a great job later that same day, breaking it down long form, 30 minutes to talk about what the sacks mean, what the sacks don't mean. Take a listen to that guy when you have a chance. But no, he had a great game stopping the run. He had a great game sealing the edge and in coverage. Sure. Did he have a great game rushing the passer specifically? No. The answer is an easy no for me from that perspective. He had a great game overall, but in those situations where they asked him to rush the passer and he was either chipped, whether he was one-on-one, the ball got out beforehand, but the majority of those throws from AR were 3 seconds and over, and either he was chipped and he wasn't making it home, or he was literally unblocked and the ball simply just came out beforehand. But I was most impressed by Travon Walker, which is funny because everyone was singing the praises of Josh Allen, and I'm looking at the film, second and third takes, and I'm like, I don't understand why is nobody talking about Trayvon? Like, Trayvon had a 16.5% win rate on his pass rushes, and he was blocked almost, most plays, whereas Allen was in coverage on more of those plays, and I'm watching like, all right, cool. And Allen has a 3% win rate on his actual pass rushes. These aren't close. Like, one of those is like legitimately a good win rate, and the other one is like, all right, we got to work on this. But those sacks inflated the numbers, unfortunately. But if you remember, hey man, one of those sacks, or two of those sacks were when Josh Allen was actually in coverage, and he just ran up to the line, and pushed AR out. And the third sack it was after the first sack of the game, was when it took nearly 5 seconds, where he just looped around the whole way, and AR was trying to run for the first down. It was seemingly, basically a tackle for a loss on a run play, essentially. I need to take that into context, because in the whole game, Josh Allen only had 4 pressures. 3 of those were the sacks. Right. You do the math. That means he had one like legitimate pressure that wasn't this 5-second run around chase the guy play. Like, that's all that I'm getting at is Travon had a legit good game where he countered. He actually, got stopped with the power. He stood him up, countered, got the sack. 3 seconds. That's a legitimate play, and he did it multiple times. I'm looking forward to see that guy continue that growth, because that's what we've been looking for, is having that true number one, or that 2 1As.
So, I mean, hey, this is amazing to hear from you, because this time 2 years ago, you were like talking about how he was a future bust. I'm joking, of course.
Hey, man.
You're
going to get me killed in these streets.
Listen, you weren't saying future bust necessarily right away, but I think this is what we were talking about. If Walker was going to work, that's what you would want to see. And I think there's an element here, too, where Josh Allen is kind of opening things up for Walker and the others to go to work.
Fair.
Listen, if I'm an offensive coordinator about to face the Jaguars, I'm keying Josh Allen, and because it's not the same as keying up for Aaron Donald. I'm not ever going to expect to see Aaron Donald in coverage, which, not to give the Rams any ideas, maybe it's something fancy you want to try on, let's say, like a 3rd and long or something. I don't know that there's ever a scenario that you were being tricky is good enough to pull Aaron Donald out of the front. That's not the same. But that tells me, A, Josh Allen's that great an athlete to where he is helpful in coverage like that. There's that. And B, for as maligned as his pass rush is, they're versatile enough in their talent to do other things and be unexpected. In other words, this element of pencil whip here, I think that we need to account for. Is a 3% win rate bad on paper? Sure, but that's because what you mentioned. If I knock on your door, you know where I'm on the doorstep. But if I knock on the door, somebody else comes in through the back door. Now we have a successful invasion, so to speak, of the backfield in question. And that's where I think you see the other guys doing well. This was what makes it tough. I'd be more interested to see with the week 2 matchup coming up. From my perspective, I was wondering, and I talked about this too with Wild Card Mar of IOW Sports on the Student of the Game podcast, that I think the familiarity of Jawan Taylor could be something that favors the Jaguars and could be a very interesting matchup. What do you do? When you see Jawan Taylor start to go into his kick step and allegedly false start, because he's on the move quicker, do you try to bull rush him and make him pay for that? Or, do you use another method? Who's better to try to attack that? Is it Josh Allen or is it Trayvon Walker? Or do you mix it up? There's a whole lot of stuff going on there. And like I said, for all the criticism this group gets up front, they're at least versatile enough to pose those questions and make you think about it. Andy Reid will, I would certainly assume, right?
No, that's all fair points, and we've had that whole back and forth, offline. But no, I'm probably personally, I'm personally putting that, putting Walker on Juwan and saying, all right, beat him back into Mahomes, put him in Mahomes' lap, and that's what I'm doing the entire way, and make him beat you against power. I mean, we've seen Juwan struggle just this preseason against power on multiple plays. Because originally in Cam's camp, they were saying he was struggling with it. So that was great for me to see, and so I'm not going to forget that, and I would hope the Jaguars coaching staff wouldn't either. And backside, you will just have Josh Allen, going against a worse tackle, and let's get him some, get him better opportunities to maybe come and bring Pat Mahomes to the ground. And I know that Kermit is very difficult to bring down, but man, hey, that's the goal. That's the job. Like, if you can get 2 sacks on Pat Mahomes, it's a good day. And the fun part is the Chiefs are better on the road than they are at home, at least in 2022, which is the wild stat to say in nearly every offensive category. The only thing they did, they had one more loss on the road than at home, but literally in nearly every offensive category, they are better on the road than they are at home. Other than the sacks that they give up, it's literally the only stat that they are worse in. So if there's an opportunity for the Jaguars, it's that. Can you bring him down? Can you change the game in that way?
I mean, I hear what you're saying about better on the road than at home. Wins would certainly dictate that. And as much as people overuse wins as a stat for individuals, you are rating a team performance there. I'm not against you using it in that context, but I'd be curious to see, and I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole, but I'd be curious to see how much of it is them just facing more difficult opponents at home. Who's coming to town versus where are they going?
And I do understand, and I do get it. I understand it. I'm just looking at that 2022 schedule and literally went down the list. Like, I'm talking yards per attempt for passing, yards per attempt for rushing. We're talking total touchdowns, rushing and passing. We're talking all of it. Near every quarter QB rating, all of it. Yards per attempt, all of it. It's all better on the road, which I thought was just, wow, that is something insane. But then they lost one more game at home than they won, than on the road. And they ended up being 7-1. So I'm like, all right, cool. So they are a better team. So you will need a clean game. And if you're going to win, you're going to win at the end. It's going to be something close like that. And if you're going to pull it off, because you can't play your B game and expect to beat the Chiefs.
That being said, as much as we're talking about the defense, we have not heard a lot about Travis Michael Kelce and his prospects for return. I kind of assume he'll be back, but who knows?
Yeah.
But I think the big news that broke that really got Jags fans going, oh boy, was Chris Jones signing the deal just in time for the Jags, who were already weak on the interior line comparatively, to have an injury to a starter at the guard position that has him out for a couple weeks at least. Now you got a tough draw as Chris Jones comes back, and I think the one positive might be Rust? Question mark. I don't even know.
That literally is, that literally is the one positive that we're hoping for, is that, hey man, I hope Chris Jones is not Chris Jones. I hope Chris Jones is, Chris Jones when he shows up to training camp, not Chris Jones week 1 Chris Jones. That's what we hope for, that he's been sitting out there eating McDonald's and Checkers fries for the last few months, because otherwise there are concerns, we'll say. We know the last time we saw Chris Jones, we gave up 6 pressures and 4 tackles for a loss against him in the playoff game. Like, that's not a great time. Luke Fortner did not have a great time versus him. And Ben Barch just had a rough time. Both Ben Barch and Luke Fortner, had a rough time last week against DeForest Buckner. And now you immediately get to follow that up with the other, the Pat Mahomes of the Chiefs defense, Chris Jones. Not really looking forward to that one, to say the least. That inside pressure is always something serious for the quarterbacks.
We kind of did this last week, and I want to do it here again quickly too. So, we mentioned that the best players at their position for the Colts were Quentin Nelson, DeForest Buckner, and Shaq Leonard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who would you say that is for the Chiefs here too? Like, I would definitely put Chris Jones on that list. Obviously, Patrick LaVon Mahomes the second, and then Travis Michael Kelce would be the third if he were in the game. But since he's not, who would you say is the third guy that's among the best at their position for the Chiefs?
Well, I mean, you pretty much just hit them, though. I mean, Kelce's playing. Let's call a spade a spade. Kelce's playing, so we're not saying like they're a very top heavy team, as we saw against Detroit, and even then, I'm calling a spade a spade. Hey, even then, that was a dogfight for Detroit. They have to get a defensive touchdown to win that game, and I say all that to say, I don't know that the Chiefs have it. Like, maybe Isaiah Pacheco, maybe. And that, that's a rough one. I mean, we might even start putting Jawan Taylor in that conversation, which is crazy. But
I think you would go to the linebacker spot. I think you would go to the sophomore number who has the Greek name that I can't remember suddenly.
For the Chiefs?
Yeah. He's a second-year guy. I interviewed him in person, and he looks like a kid. And then he puts a helmet and shoulder pads on, and he's a beast.
Are you talking Nick? Are you talking what? Nick Bolton? I'm trying to figure out who's that linebackers. I don't recall their linebackers. I'm sorry. Willie Gay.
Yeah, with listen, I think, listen, I knew you would agree if I just came out and said Kelce, Jones, and Mahomes.
Yeah.
But I mean, think about what we have there, right? We have the quarterback, right? We have the guy who gets the quarterback, and we have the guy that helps the quarterback escape danger. Like, the only way it could be more lethal, because what are the three things you're supposed to do? You have a quarterback, protect your quarterback, get the other guy's quarterback, are the main 3 things typically you're trying to do. Now, we're not here to say they have a bad offensive line, but the case has been made, not by me necessarily, but the case has been made that the offensive line from this year to last took a step back, and they even still have Creed Humphrey and other elements to that line that are pretty darn good. And you mentioned Jawan Taylor being up there.
And it's not to say he's been good. It's just the fact that's I'm trying to figure out who else is just above average, because we're not talking we're not in the great conversation anymore after we get past those top 3. We're talking just guys who are just above average at their role, and that's a hard one. But nevertheless, whether or not these are above average guys, that is simply how much better at their role those 3 guys are than than their peers. That's just how much better Chris Jones is than those bottom, whatever it is, 28 other defensive tackles. That's just how much better Kelsey is than the other 27, 20, 29 tight ends. That's just how much better Pat Mahomes is than every other quarterback. Like, those guys raise that bar so much so that they can cover for the fact that the rest of the team is just average to above average, and that's okay.
And that's
But
okay.
yeah, that's okay as long as those guys are there.
And you know what? This is where I got it wrong, Travis. I said linebacker earlier. I meant defensive end. I mean George Karlaftis. That's who I'm talking.
Oh, yeah, he was a monster last year. I honestly, I didn't see much from him against Detroit, but he was a monster last season. So that's going to be something to take a look out on, like whether or not Harrison's going to play well against him or Walker Little's going to have another clean sheet. But yeah, so that's something to look forward to. But again, I think that our biggest issue is going to be that inside pressure and how Ben Barch rebounds this week, how Luke Fortner rebounds after being literally PFF's worst rated center because he struggled against power and then struggled against power. Oh, that was back in 2022. And then we opened the season with him struggling against power against Buckner. And we now go against Chris Jones to start.
DeForest Buckner scares Derrick Henry.
But
is that
we're in the AFC South, sir. Almost all the defensive tackles that we're going to go against are going to be those powerful, those power guys, and those are elite guys.
Exactly.
So he's got to find a way to anchor down better.
Yeah, it sucks. It sucks when you got ratings, but you're in for a tough out every week. Like, I remember, going back to the days where Brian Urlacher and that group, Hillenmeyer and those guys were there with the Bears, and everybody was all like, the Vikings O-line is terrible. No, look at what they play. And I think
you're going to look terrible when you're playing that slate every season.
Yeah, when you got Buckner twice, the Titans front's amazing. You're gonna get them twice. The Texans, okay, maybe they're not well known at defensive tackle, but their defense has been their high point, and that's the weaker of the 6 games, right? So anyways,
yeah.
Well, Travis, I mean, we've hit a lot of stuff here. Why don't you go ahead and come out with what you think the Jags need to do and give us a score prediction here? We've got about 5 minutes left.
All right, so the Jags have to have a clean game. I mean, you've seen I think we've all at this point seen the stats. The Chiefs are going to score 27 points. It's just what they do when Doug Peterson plays against. Yeah, plays against Andy Reid. It's just for whatever reason.
Jags Chiefs. It's 27-20.
It was 27-20, 27-17, and 27. What was the one? What was the playoffs? Goodness.
It was 27-20.
Then it was 27-20, 27-17, and 27-20. That's 3 games in a row. And it's just like, all right, cool. You cannot beat them unless you score 27 to 28 points. That is your bare minimum. You just need to understand they're going to get a touchdown a quarter for the most part. And Pat Mahomes, he's going to find a way to Band-Aid tape this thing together, whatever, no matter who's playing. Like, that. So the only way I see Jets winning this game is with a clean slate. Like, we're talking no turnovers. We haven't seen it from them yet. We have to see them put that together. No turnovers, maybe even a big game from Jamal Agnew or that defense getting a turnover here or there. We need that assistance because, again, that 27 points is something that we're hoping to see from this offense that we simply haven't seen.
Special teams is your angle there too.
Right. I'm like, I don't care how you do it. Like, just find a way to hit that 28-point range. And then I think you give yourself a real shooting chance to come away with the win there. But again, we haven't seen a game with no turnovers from this offense, even in preseason, where from our starting offense. That's what we're still looking for them to put together, because those turnovers, they're going to make you pay. I do have the Chiefs winning this one, if I want to be honest with you.
When have you not?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, but I had us winning last week against the Colts, and even I said they were going to struggle against the RPO, and I have the Chiefs winning this one by more than 10. I have them winning 41-24. I think the defense is going to struggle, honestly.
17 points. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know that they give up 40, simply because I think the Jags can control the ball a little bit better than that. Yeah, I get it. They got Chris Jones, and based on what they saw from Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby last week, I think they're going to task Chris Jones with attacking that middle and sealing that up, which means it's going to be about winning things on the outside versus Karlaftis and the linebackers.
Outside zones.
Yeah, exactly. And I think what they're going to have trouble accounting for is Trevor's mobility. I think you're going to see some boots. I think you're going to see some things happen where Trevor escapes and finds a Calvin Ridley, a Christian Kirk down the field. I think there's going to be some balls, and this might go to a turnover if Trevor loses control of his footwork, as he says he's done in the past sometimes. He's going to find the key for him in this game, in my opinion, is going to be to find Evan Ingram when it's time to escape, or even an NTN out in the flat when it's time to escape. Right. And the ability to turn that into moving the change, I think, decides this. I think 41-17's a bit pessimistic. I mean, I'm not going to show him a picture of the "This Team Makes Me Drink" t-shirt again, but what I will say is I'm not going to say 27 just because it's trendy. I really think that's what's going to happen here. The Jags will give up a mistake or two on defense, a big play that they're able to hold to a field goal, which any Jaguars fan should be impressed with Patrick Mahomes II. I know Kelce will be back. Will he be 100% yet? I don't know. That's something worth questioning, but he'll be good for a couple catches at least, probably something with a touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if he had like 5 for 80 with a score. That sounds like a good Kelce line.
That's a win for the defense.
I agree. I think Chris Jones, though, is going to be good to be a problem, to stop that inside run and limit the playbook. I'm with that. For me, I'm going to go 27. I can't say 27-20. That just feels cliche. But I'll go 27-24. I think Calvin Ridley's good for one more touchdown, but I don't think they have enough protection up front to truly block the attack of the pass rush from the Chiefs. Travis Holmes, tell the world where you can be found, my guy.
I can be found on all the socials, Travis D. Holmes, whether that's Twitter, X, Twix, Facebook, you name it, Threads, etc. You can find my writings on BigCatCountry.com. Check out our, we'll have our Big Cat Country staff roundtable where we have all of our picks for the week. That should be up either later this afternoon or super early tomorrow morning. Stop by Big Cat Country, get all of your Jaguar needs.
Absolutely. And of course, you can check out my piece on Calvin Ridley from last week and his ascension back into the Jacksonville lineup and the NFL as a number one receiver on the Jaguar Report. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You can find me on Twitter at the SOTG. Find me on Instagram as the same, the SOTG. Check out my writings on the Jaguar Report of SI or the 3-point conversion, as well as the Black and Gold Banneret, where I do my college coverage for UCF. And also Wednesday nights at 8:40 p.m. Eastern, check out the Student of the Game podcast, where I talk about NFL things in general. This past week, too, this game in particular was a topic of discussion because the Chiefs are an interesting specimen, to say the least, and not just because of this upcoming game. So, yeah, make sure you check all of that out as well. An honor, joy, and privilege for you guys to jump in and enjoy this. Travis, of course, thank you. There'll be a next time for sure. We'll catch you guys next week, but until then, class dismissed.